this morning is entitled The Healing Presence. It's my story. It's my personal story. And I am more than grateful to have the opportunity to share this story with you and to be able to stand here in front of you and share it from my heart. A year ago, this month, I found myself in the Royal Jubilee Hospital in intensive care. I was there for 5.5 months. It's a fair length of time. I was in intensive care for close to, I believe, 2 weeks. It's very fuzzy because I really don't remember a lot of that time. I was on dialysis for a while. I had also had blood transfusions. And I was on life support. Something was obviously going on in my body as it was shutting down. And I wasn't really consciously aware of what was happening to me at the time. I had wonderful care by the doctors and the nurses. Superb care. So after, I believe, close to 2 weeks, I started to improve a little bit, and they decided to move me to a ward. So that was exciting for me because I was by then aware of really where I was. Because I don't know where I was for those 2 weeks. I honestly don't know. Somewhere up in the clouds, up in the heavens. But prayers were certainly helping my body heal. Many people from the Truth Center came to visit me, and I am more than grateful for that. Such as Gloria, Linda, yeah, thank you. Lassie came twice a week. She came very faithfully, I believe every Tuesday and every Friday, if I'm right.
I think Ed came and Anne.
Yeah, Anne came, Juliana came, Ed, Deb, you know. And it was just so wonderful, and I had my loving family and my loving friends around me to help heal this body. I was at the point when I was actually moved to the ward. I couldn't walk. But I could talk because they took the breathing tube out. So I was able to learn to talk again, which was great because it's one thing I love to do, is talk, right? So I was able to teach myself that. And walking, oh, that was a feat. Every day I had to go down to Visio, and they started to put me on the bike. Oh my God, I said to myself, right? So here I was doing all the exercises to get my legs strengthened. And then after a little while, I was getting stronger, and I was able to feed myself. I wasn't able to feed myself for a while either. Or even pick up a glass to drink water, you know. But I said to myself, I'm not going to stay like this. I remember saying that. I'm going to get better. I'm getting my independence back. Because that's one thing I have to share with you that really bothered me. What about my independence, right? Because I happen to think I am quite an independent woman. Anyway, I just kept working at it, and I would take my walker. Finally, I got a walker. And I would practice walking on the unit. And the nurses and the caregivers there, the aides, they would root me on. Oh, Carrelyn, good for you, right? So that was I had a rooting gallery going for me. And I'm bored that it ever feel good to hear them say that I was able to walk again. Because at one point, I'll be very honest with you on that front, I asked the physio, will I ever walk again? And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to honestly tell you something. You will walk again. And I thought, good. Things are really happening here, right? So as it went on in the days, and I was there, I sat for 5.5 months, I had many wonderful roommates as well. And the room was usually like 2 people in it. It was actually called the happy ward because there was a lot of laughter going on in that room. The last roommate I had was 100 years old and a real inspiration to me. She had the most wonderful sense of humor, I'll tell you. And that made me laugh. And one night, in the middle of the night, the nurse came up to me, patted me on the shoulder, woke me up. And she said, look over there. So I looked over in the bed. And here was this wonderful lady by the name of Joyce, sitting up in her bed with a hat on and all her clothes on. She got dressed in the middle of the night. So I sat there and I laughed and laughed. I thought it was just wonderful. And then one day I had this wonderful older doctor, she was a woman. I just adored her. Well, I'll tell you why. She came up to me and she said, Carrelyn, she says, I want you to know that you are a star patient. I thought, wow, that's good. She says, yeah. She says, you really are. She says, we've watched you improve and your inner strength that you have. And we are just so pleased that you are doing so much better and will soon be out of the hospital. I thought, wow, did I ever feel good about a star patient? That made me feel wonderfully well. But I guess the bottom line, if you say, of the story is really, I believe in prayer. And I also believe very strongly from my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Emma Smiley, that the power that grew the body can surely heal it. And I have this little booklet I found as I was thinking about my talk. And it was written by Emma Smiley. And it's called How About That? A neat title. By Emma M. Smiley, my spiritual teacher and the founder of the Truth Center. And she says this about prayer. Prayer is that which we need in our spiritual world, as breath is that which we need in our physical world. As it is necessary to breathe so that our physical body may live and be sustained, as it is necessary to pray in order that our spiritual life may be nourished and maintained, and sustained, Prayer is our spiritual breath. Prayer is our spiritual breathing. It is the way by which we mentally and emotionally breathe in and breathe out. Prayer is just as necessary, just as vitally important as our physical breath. Wow. Very, very powerful. And from Dr. Emmett Fox, he also says this about prayer. Prayer does change things. I am a living example of that. Let us be perfectly clear about this. Prayer does change things. Many people say that prayer is a good thing because it gives us courage and fortitude for meeting our troubles. They say that prayer often gives a man out of difficulty simply by giving him or her self-confidence, which he or she would otherwise have lacked. Of course, this is not spiritual truth. The fact is that scientific prayer, which is seeing the presence of God where the trouble seems to be, does not merely give us courage to meet the trouble. It changes the trouble into harmony. Prayer heals the body by changing the tissues, and it does this by first changing the mind, which forms them. Prayer changes environment by actually alerting it, not merely by altering our attitude toward it. Prayer brings man or woman his salvation or her salvation by changing his or her nature fundamentally, not by making the best of him or her as he or she is. Prayer opens the way to new and better things. It does not patch up the old things. The body, the environment, the universe itself is plastic to our thought, and it always reflects our sincere belief. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. I'm so grateful, too, that I learned the power of prayer from my spiritual teacher, Dr. Smiley. She taught me how to pray. It took a little while, because, sometimes when you're in prayer and you, like in a meditation, I would go to the healing services many times at the True Center when Emma was there. And I would sit there at first in pain because of the silence. The silence bothered me for some reason. It takes practice to pray, right? To become still in your mind. But it took time, and I did that. Well, I stand here before you, healed. I also can drive a car. I've been driving a car for over 6 months. So that's good. That's a wonderful thing to have done. I can shop and do many other things that I could do before. Well, one thing, I'm not quite ready to run that marathon yet. That's not there. But I can walk, and I said to myself, walkers are wonderful. They help people. They're great. But this lady was not going to be continuing walking with the walker. But I did for a while. And even when I went out in myself by my car, and I did, I take my walker, put it in the trunk of my car, and was able to lift it out and carry on, and thank God for walkers. But I kept saying to myself, I'm not continuing to do this. And before I knew it, I was able to walk again. And it's just wonderful, and I'm more than grateful that I'm healed and I'm well, and I can tell you my story. And I do pray and hope that I've left you with something today, because it's so important to believe in yourself and have faith in yourself, and to be around people who love you, encourage you for who you are, and see the best in you. I remember I was a school teacher for 36 years. And I got a wonderful letter one day in my mailbox from my principal, who I totally adored. And I was very fond of her. We became very good friends. And she wrote me this letter. And in the letter it said, Carrelyn, you always see the good in every situation. And I thought, well, what a wonderful thing to say. And I remember when I read it, I said to myself, I learned that from the truth principles, from my spiritual teacher, and also from my wonderful parents, to see the good in every situation. And what happened to me for those many months, there was a lot of good in there. And I look at that. And the people who I met, and I began to laugh again and tell jokes. Like I would look at this wonderful old lady, the older lady, I should say, sorry. And I'd say, she'd be sitting in her chair, and I'd be sitting in mine, and we'd look at each other, and it was very quiet. It's the early evening after dinner. And we sit there, and she'd say, nobody's coming to see us. And I'd say, no, it's okay, Joyce. And I'd laugh, and I said, but look, it's just you and me, babe. And she'd laugh at that, right? So, and we were known as the joyful ward of two people. So we brought some laughter for the nurses, and because they don't have an easy job, right? So anyway, thank you for listening, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.